Okay, so playing through makes against Snowy. You guys remember the time?
Yep, we just fold, right?
He does these weird donk bets on flush draw boards.
Usually the monotones are good for us.
Yeah, usually monotone is better for the in-position player because the in-position player will generally have more suited cards, just as a proportion of their range. Of course, it does depend on what the ranks of the cards are as well. So if it's like you've got a few high-ranked cards, then actually the out-of-position player might have some more flushes. So do we want to float?
Do you know anything about like how Snowy probes these spots?
He's pretty balanced.
All right, I mean we have like a ton of like better floats, but this one doesn't hurt too much. Not a single diamond though.
Yeah, I mean half the deck's got a diamond in it.
Yeah. Okay. Float one.
And there's a bunch of flushes for both players. So how do we play these boards?
With our medium flushes, we'd still check back. You can start using like offsuit hands as a bluff.
Yeah, so when it's 4 to a flush on its turn, generally with the nut flush, you're going to go for an overbet, and you'd overbet stuff like sets as well as a draw bluff, and then weak pairs, and as well as a bit of air. Does that make sense? Because we want to be able to threaten stacks when we have the nut flush. There's no way that when we have the nut flush, our opponent can block.
Yeah.
Can block that.
When people like if you, let's say you overbet like 2x here, and he has enough flush and he just jams, like do players ever just do that? Like they're not going to get anything extra out of it, but they just do it because you can overbet sets.
Yeah, I mean you fold everything except for the nut flush there.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we make that overbet, say we overbet like 3 times a pot, and then our opponent shoves, we'd only ever call with the nuts, because our range is the nuts plus bluffs, and so our opponent can't actually have a raising range.
I think we can just check it back, right?
No. Everything's a flush or a pair there, so we're literally at the bottom of our range. Is the ace high?
No, because we have a lot of floats that are flushes now.
Yeah. Both flushes and pairs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So against the limp, usually with a high-low offset hand, you just check it back. On this board, there's not too much going on. If we had a single spade, maybe we could float.
Yeah, I often just fold like these spots.
I mean, it is relatively close. Like if we had king high, then we'd probably float, or a queen high with
a spade,
a better kicker or a spade.
Like queen 9, queen 10.
Yeah. All right, what do you think of this board?
These boards are like really hard to play, in my opinion. They're like better for a small blind.
Boards, by Brandon. So these boards are hard to play. Why is that?
You kind of want to check it here, and then when he bets, it's seems like difficult calls to me.
I'll show you guys. What do I have? Let's look at this 6-pan. All right, so say we were in position instead of out of position. Say it was button big blind. What would we do with our range? Say instead we had opened on the button for like min, small one folded, and then the big blind called, and we have this flop. What is our strategy there?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, if we bet bigger.
How
Especially
big?
when it's like slightly lower. Well, Brendan said pot. I think that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. I slightly disagree, but
Like if I had in like nines, tens, might bet a little bit bigger than pot.
so this is one of the sims. This is one of the sims. This is a 6-pan flop. 8-7-3. Here we're betting twice the pot with all the other pairs except for aces and a little bit of kings, as well as potting it. And in terms of king queen, it's mainly a check. That's in position. Out of position, it actually won't be too different. The sizing is going to be on average a bit smaller, so there's going to be some small sizes as well. But the theme of it is the same. There's also going to be some more check raises. So a hand like kings or queens might decide to check raise. With king queen, obviously we can go either way. So what do you guys prefer? Bet 2-3 times the pot or check? Yeah, so they've got offsuit 2 pairs.
I think just 8-7.
But the equity denial is pretty important. Are we doing checking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like betting here, and you can also barrel another diamond on the river.
How big?
450, 3/4.
Which hands are we going to fold?
Ace highs.
Which
mainly.
hand? So ace highs mainly. And besides that, it's just a bunch of worse hands. So we have a fair bit of showdown value. Do you think our showdown value is worth sacrificing?
I mean, don't we check a lot of ace highs here just for the showdown value?
Yeah, of course.
You're saying that king queen high has just enough like showdown value?
Yeah, it's almost got as much showdown value as ace high does.
Wow. Okay. I guess.
Checking range on the river. Once you guys check, it can't be only ace high. It's going to have a few weaker hands and a few stronger hands.
So is this a check fold if he bets?
Yep. And then it's the same kind of thing here. So like we're checking and hoping to win against the weaker king high. And then we're going to face ace high a fair bit. Like think about it. On the turn, if we bet all of our king highs and queen highs, whenever a king or a queen comes, our checking range is absolutely gutted. So having like king queen and stuff is pretty good. And we can fold because our checking range is it's got a lot of ace high in it, which can call instead of king high. So king high with, I mean, king two maybe would be a fold because our four can't outdraw the three. Because two can't outdraw the three, but king four is a little bit closer. And now we can probably just fold because we've got a bunch of ace highs and better king highs to call with. Also stuff with a heart, two hearts. All right, now the small blind called. It's a bit different. What do you guys think?
So it's like a rag board, but also a different thing is suited clubs.
Yep.
How
So
does
this is a very
Snowy
wet
play
rag
like
board.
completes like from the small blind?
A few pocket pairs, a few sort of stuff. Mostly played three bet or fold, but there is stuff in the middle of his range, like the bottom of his three betting range, which would be calls instead. So knowing that, you probably will have a fair chunk of the sets, and as well as a bunch of eights.
Okay, so he has a lot of small pocket pairs here and small suited connectors.
Yeah, fair bit of stuff like that.
Well, doesn't that mean it's really good for him then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really good. If it's reasonably good for him in terms of him having a bunch of eights, as well as a few sets. What does that mean for our range?
We need to check it back more often.
Yeah, we're going to be relatively polar when we do decide to bet. Okay, so a bunch of the over pairs can bet. King high is probably not quite weak enough to want to try and contest the pot. We can just check it back. A weaker king high maybe. King high with the club is a bit more tempting to bet. So I think with this hand we can go either way, but the vast majority of it we're going to be checking back. Now what do you guys think?
So this is kind of similar to the previous board where we have showdown value. So
we don't have as much showdown value because we're up against a small blind instead of the big blind.
oh,
So we actually don't have any showdown value. We do have some draw value with our king and our queen.
So we want to like get fives and sixes, sevens to fold.
Yep. So we can sort of get folds from some ace highs, pairs, probably less likely, but we do have a lot of equity against pairs. Also, we have the dichotomy where when one of the flush draws completes, we have a blocker to both of them.
Yeah, so we can bluff both clubs and hearts.
Yeah.
I think this is folded. Let me check. Oh no, it's definitely open. Jack 3 is the edge.
Top pair and a couple back doors. Fair bet, I think. So yeah, but
I think we check often on the turn.
Yeah,
because we have a lot of stabs.
The king comes. I think our middle pair with a kicker that actually plays. But actually, I think it doesn't play against any other jack. So knowing that, we have to think about how we're going to construct our checking range. Our betting range, if we have a king, we're going to be betting relatively big. What the bulk of our checking range might be in terms of check calls, it might be the 3s or 7s. But even those might decide to bet. A-size, definitely we can have a lot of them. So I think with this hand, we can go for some value.
So we need that what we want to get called by, right? If we want to get called by a 3 or 7, got to bet smaller, like a quarter.
I think those will call a half pot bet as well.
Oh, okay. Spot on.
Yeah, the 7. So 3-bet. So this is a pretty standard call against a small blind. We're not loving it. It's a pretty shit flop. With the 2 overcard type hands like this, right, we actually lose to a fair chunk of the bluffs. Getting dominated by Ace Jack, Ace Queen, King Jack, King Queen. We don't have any backdoor hearts, which is actually slightly important because then we can outdraw Ace High. We have a different way of outdrawing Ace High. And we do have a good chunk of pairs and stuff like that. Whether or not this hand particularly, we want to be folding it, obviously we can continue with all Ace High. Almost all of our King High. This is the strongest Queen High that we have.
Well, you mentioned that like Queen Jack, hearts, clubs, and diamonds are better than the spades.
Yeah, that is true. And so similarly, Queen 10, Queen 9 with hearts with the backdoor flush draw would be better. So I think for those reasons, we can just let it go. Because even if we hit, we'll be behind. Enough of time to make it not so tempting for us to call with our 3 outs. Sorry, 6 outs.
Yep.
So I think the Ace 2 particularly can go either way.
Yep, it's yellow.
So relatively good board for a hand, not so great for a range. Yeah, I mean, both players have a bunch of kings.
Yep. Still got to be a call.
And then we can let it go. All right, so facing the large 4-bet. So against a large 4-bet, he's putting a quarter of his stacks in. Whenever they put a quarter of his stacks in, we can basically play a 5-bet or fold. He's let us have that opportunity. We don't really have to have too many calls there. Can't remember this one, but let's do it anyway. So a couple back doors and a pair. And bottom pair. So what do you guys think? When deciding which bottom pairs to bet, how do we make that decision?
Choose the one with good backdoors. Like this one has a backdoor flush and backdoor straight draw.
Yeah. So I guess we can go for 1-bet. I mean, this is actually relatively close. But
is it called when it's just one person?
Yeah, I mean it would actually be a fold heads up, but like because we're in position against the small blind. We can focus more on connectivity than high card type stuff, because we have the outs that we do have. Our pair outs don't matter too much because they're always pretty crap. But stuff like 2 pair outs and straight draws and flush draws and stuff become more important.
Beautiful.
All right, so quarter pot raise. What do you guys think?
So how do we choose our bet sizing on the flop?
On this particular flop, we can go pretty small. Usually, the small blind will bet small. Usually, the small blind in small blind versus the big blind spots will bet half pot and quarter pot quite frequently. It's actually pretty rare for them to be betting pot, just because you don't want to inflate the pot too big out of position. Also, you can induce raises with some of the hands, and then knowing that when the turn comes through, we can start overbetting. Okay, so like when we're facing a raise here, we have essentially the nuts, right?
Yep.
Don't block any queen, we don't block any 2 pair type stuff. I think we can go for a 3-bet.
Is ace queen 3-bet sometimes?
Ace queen.
I don't remember. Like I feel like I've seen like
maybe with a single heart. No, really. Ace heart.
What about check raising the turn here?
Like calling and then check raising the turn?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's an option as well. So you can go away with that. You'll have to do both.
Okay.
What would be some bluffs you pick for like a 3-bet?
Well, you would have had a bunch of hearts, a bunch of straight draws, right? All of them bricked on this 10. So,
yep.
Knowing that, what do we want to do?
We'll be doing some checking.
Yeah, we're doing a fair bit of checking, so I guess we can just check jam his hand.
All right. Thanks, Snowy.
Oh, oh wow!
He blurted up. He blurted up. Yeah, what do you call with open and straight flush draw? Yeah, I mean that's a fair call, I guess.
Can you really call a 3-bet with that?
He had hearts.
Won't he be dominated by like some of our stronger hard draws that do decide to 3-bet?
Yeah, but we also have draws which aren't hearts. A bunch of straight draws, backdoor flush draws, etc. Yeah, I mean, even against the small 3-bet, like we're literally at the bottom of our range when we're opening range here. So. All right, so this one's a connected board. 5-6 got there.
If we do bet, maybe bet half pot, but I don't think we do quarter pot on these boards.
That seems fair. The ace comes. I mean, he's gonna have
more ace highs.
I mean, it's actually relatively difficult for him to play ace high without a backdoor flush draw and only hearts and 4s. Where there's going to be a few 2 pairs. I mean, I think we can check. If he checks back, then we can value bet river. This is probably a good size. Our river checking range is going to be just much weaker pairs. Probably 7s. Weak 7 will be the top of that checking range there. A hand like 10-3,
all right,
like one high, one low type stuff doesn't really play too well in the raised pot. just start betting.
All right. We want to get called by the ace, so pot looks good.
Yeah, I mean he's going to float some ace, but obviously we can not be very happy against a raise because then he's got a bunch of two pairs. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't get value from a single ace.
Yep.
Can't remember 10-7 is probably open in the small blind, not on the button.
This is 3-bet sometimes or fold.
Yeah, okay, we'll go this way. I mean, against the small blind, you're going to have a lot of ace X. They're also going to have a fair chunk of like pocket pairs between the 4 and the ace that we want to sort of slightly deny equity from. So I think we can go for a small bet, check back turn, and then do whatever on the river.
Okay.
So on this
I think
side
a
of the board,
good
we're going to go
spot.
for a relatively big bet size. Pot and a half, 2 pot, something like that would be good for most of our range. Because very difficult frames have like a jack 4, jack 3, 3, 4 maybe, but we're still in pretty good shape with a pocket pair.
I think with the sand, just check back, right?
Yeah,
if we do
I agree.
overbet, do the queens and then ace jack, king jack.
Yeah, do that for value, but then for bluffs, which is sort of what we're thinking of doing with this hand, in the same category, you'd have the wheel aces.
Yeah, why would we bluff a hand like
instead.
ace 5 and like king queen, for example?
Maybe not king queen, but queen X and king X, one high, one low, right? So like you can have like a king 5, queen 5, king 6, queen 6, both with backdoor flush draws and stuff like that. Sorry, I mean backdoor straight draws and backdoor flush draws.
Oh, yeah.
Which would bet. Instead, you can bet like 2 or 3 times a pot with that. I mean, here we just continue with hearts. I think it's actually relatively close where we want to continue with this one. I think with a single heart might be a bit better.
So the 10 out is still probably good here.
Yes. It is pretty close.
Okay. Nothing wrong with folding then.
So we can call a raise. All right, what do you guys think? Any thoughts on this turn? How should I play this?
King is better for him.
Yeah,
He would
so
check back like king queen, like you mentioned in the previous example.
Yeah, king queen, if I jump king high, ace king, obviously.
If we check the flush draws we want to check are probably the nut flush ones, and maybe you can consider checking the king queen 3 one. We're obviously betting all the combo draw ones and the lower flush draws.
Okay, if we decide to bet, so the first thing we need to think about is if we decide to bet, which bet size should we use? That makes sense for our value, right? And then after we know that, then we can decide which hands we want to put into the bluffing range. So if we had like a set of 5s, a set of 7s,
so
Jack
polar.
7, 5, something like that. King Jack maybe. Yeah, and what size would that mean? Yes, the king is pretty good for him. So what size would we choose?
We can't go like too crazy, right? Like I think pot is okay. Like, will we really like go like 2 pot on a card that's good for him?
Yeah, so we're going to be checking a lot because the card's good for him, but he doesn't have any sets, and we do. Well, he's only got a set of kings, but not too worried about that because I think kings will still bet the flop. So it doesn't have any sets. So when we have the sets, we essentially have the nuts here. So when we want to bet with the nuts, 2 streets to go, we want to use a relatively large size in order to get stacks in.
Do we also go for check raise lines pretty often?
Yeah,
Since
I mean,
the card's good for him.
we can go for check raise lines, but because the 50% rule, he's going to be checking back more than half the time.
Okay.
Because whenever we have a betting range, when we check, he checks back more than half the time. So we can't always rely on that. Obviously, if we have a set, we can both bet it and check raise it.
Okay. So now that we said we should bet 3 times the pot if we do have a set.
Yeah. So we can go 2 or 3 times the pot. It's a pretty reasonable size. I mean, then with the bluffs, that one is a reasonable candidate. Obviously, we could have checked, but I just want to show you guys the thought process you guys should be using. So that turn king is pretty good for him, but he doesn't have any of the nuts, which would have bet the flop.
So I've never faced someone like that. Just probe 3 bet, like 3 pot on the turn.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay. Well, I'm trying to get you guys to use the good line.
That is very, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, in that spot, you're trying to make a king indifferent to calling, and it's actually pretty difficult to do that with any.
So if he had ace king, it would be like very tough for him to decide what to do.
Yeah, I mean, ace king is probably going to call anyway, but yeah, you're trying to threaten stacks, okay, and you can't really do that with a pot size bet because after they'd call a pot size bet, the SPR would still be like 7.
Because you only got in 1 bet in.
Yeah,
it 1350, like 9K over that.
Yeah,
like
it would still be like 7 or 8, which is like pretty ridiculous for you to just pot it and then jam 7 times a pot. So like if you three pot it and he calls and the SPR is like 2 or 3, then it makes more sense to shove river. Which is a line that you're threatening. Right, you're threatening to 3 pot it and then shove river when you have a set of 5s. So yeah, this king 9, I mean, it looks pretty, and the price is good, but we're pretty close to the bottom of the range. I mean, king 10 can probably call.
I think this is the worst offsuit king. Maybe king 8 is the worst.
Yeah, I think king 8 is the worst. So knowing that, you do want to fold a good chunk of your offsuit stuff. Against the 3-bet, and picking hands from the bottom of the range to fold is the way to choose which ones to use. The bottom of each category, so you have a category king high, queen high, etc. And you just fold from the bottom.
Ooh, I think the quarter pot makes sense on this board. With this hand.
That's fair.
How do we continue this one?
So we can check or we can bet.
So we definitely want to bet because the turn improves our hand.
That's not necessarily a reason to bet.
Okay.
So just because turn improves your hand doesn't mean you have to bet that hand. I'm not saying that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be betting this hand, but the logic that since the turn improved our hand, we should bet is not necessarily correct all the time.
Okay.
So you shouldn't use that piece of logic when you're playing, because oftentimes you're going to make mistakes doing that. So if you get something from this session, you should maybe write this down. Just because the turn improved your hand when you're bluffing doesn't mean you have to bet.
Okay.
All right. So we're out of position. We generally want to be constructing our range such that the opponent will check back more than half the time. Bet relatively small on the flop. So his range is going to be still pretty wide. Both players' ranges are going to be still pretty wide. If we check, he's going to check back more than half the time. So we're going to realize, I reckon, with our flush draw.
Our pairals are still good too.
Yeah, as well as that. So we can check and hope to draw to either a pair or a flush, and then probably value bet the river. And if we face a bet, depending on the size of the bet, we might even want to raise as a bluff. We're going to be doing the same sort of thing with some of our jacks as well. Right, we're going to have some jack X hands, which will go for a check raise on this board, knowing that the opponent will want to try and deny equity from both flush draws. Yep, so that happens some of the time. So we've got a flush now. Right, so we can do the same sort of thing. We can check. We can go for a check raise, or we can go for a bet and get called by worse. When we decide to bet, we need to pick a decent bet size for
So
our
we're mainly
hand.
targeting a Jack X, right?
No, so we need to think about our entire range of hands and which hands that we want to be betting. Okay, so would we value bet a 10, and what size would we value bet a 10 for? Right. Or obviously, we can probably also value bet a jack. What size would we value bet that? Can we even value bet a 5? Maybe. Can we value bet an overpair? Well, if we're value betting a 10, then we can probably value bet an overpair as well. Right? So you need to think about that sort of logic, and then where this hand sort of fits in. This hand is so high up, can go in multiple lines, depending on blockers to our opponent's range and blockers to parts of our own range. Luckily that we know if we can't have a hand where I'm blocking, we can't have like a 10-7 of diamonds. So a 7 of diamonds doesn't block as much 10x or suited Jack X that both players can have.
Okay.
And remember that we still need to construct our checking range such that the opponent can't bet more than half the time, which is the 50% rule. So thinking about all that, which hands we want to check, maybe a 4, maybe a 5, bunch of ace highs. Right? Going to be checking some of them. In terms of our bluffs, when we want to bet, some of those bluffs will probably have the 7 of diamonds, right? 8 high with the 7 of diamonds, 9 high with 7 of diamonds, stuff like that. We'll all want to be betting. And we have to think about which size we want to use, which size are we going to try and protect against a raise, right? If we bet small to try and represent a 10, when we face a raise, are we going to 3-bet? Or are we just going to call?
Wow.
If we pot it and our opponent raises, what are they representing? Right? Or if we bet twice the pot, our opponent raises, what are they representing? I think if we bet around the pot, we're sort of representing like a jack.
So what size would a
Two pairs.
7-6 a diamond, 7 diamonds like 9 or 7 diamonds 8 use?
No. So you think about the wrong way around. So you always want to think about the value before you put the bluffs in, right? So the bluffs can just be allocated to whichever size makes most sense for their blockers.
Okay, value.
So you don't use it the other way around. So the bluffs will often use multiple sizes, but the value won't. So if we have a 10, that might always bet like quarter pot, right?
Right.
And if we have like a pocket pair stronger than a 10, that might always bet half pot. And if we have a jack, that might always pot it, right? That's just an example. I'm not sure whether that's going to be true for this particular spot. The sizes might be a bit different. And then with the queen 7, because it's so strong, it would be allocated to some of those sizes to play when the opponent decides to raise. Right, so if we decide to bet quarter pot with queen 7, our opponent raises, right, we might even decide to 3-bet the queen 7, versus if we pot it and our opponent raises, we might just call.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually pretty easy to play queen 7 because no matter what you do, as long as you know how to play against a raise, you'll be okay.
Okay, so half pot would be like, let's say we bet a 10 for half pot.
Yeah, and we have a fair chunk of 10s, and we might even have some over pairs and stuff like that. So we can go half pot. Yeah, equals ace high with the ace of diamonds. That's a pretty fair hand to call with. So yeah, so that was just an example of what you need to think about when you're constructing your ranges out of position on the river. Right, you need to think through all of that sort of stuff, the different parts of your range, different parts of your opponent's range, and then you put bluffs in afterwards after you figured out what you're trying to do with your value.
So some of them were just added to protect against raises.
Yeah, some of the very strong ones. Like if you had a boat, you'd probably 3-bet that. So like if you had like a jack 3 or something. What was the board? No, sorry, jack 5. If you wanted to play that as if you had a jack, you'd like pot it, and then against a raise, you'd 3-bet. Probably all in. So this board, there's where our position. So we're just gonna be checking. So we just call the big blind. So I'm checking to him, and he's gonna be betting into us all the time. So AV is gonna be very low. Yeah, it's actually pretty uncommon for him to be checking back. I'd have thought. If you look at the sims that I've run, the checking range is like 15% or something like that. So yeah, same kind of deal here, 50% rule. But our range is very, very weak. So checking a lot, and then I think checking to try and get the showdown. We have so many different bluffs that we could use instead of queen high. That we don't have to use
fair.
queen high.
Could you give some examples?
We got 10 high, jack high, all those we want to use instead. But yeah, you're not expecting to win the pot too much with queen high there. You might use queen high some of the time just to get him to fold some queen high, but it's not a great spot. All right, so back to flush draw. Don't have any backdoor straight draws.
10 and jack makes
10 jack.
Oh yeah, my bad. 10 and jack make a backdoor straight draw, so that improves our hand a little bit. So what do we think? Probably going to be betting this board at relatively high frequency.
Okay. So quarter.
Yep.
Yep. Check back, I think, with this one.
So yeah, not enough going on.
Not much going on for the hand.
But a spade, no, could float. If you had any backdoor, we could float. Don't have anything going on, so.
Yep. I think checking it back is
Yeah,
good.
there's not like we have quite a bit of showdown value here actually. After he checks back, and I think it's the same kind of deal here. Obviously, we're not very happy in terms of trying to win the pot with Queen Eye, but it will happen some of the time. Okay, now I think we've got a blocker to
8-6.
a couple of the straights.
Yeah.
We can use that.
6-3.
I can't remember 4-5. I think it's a fold.
Yep.
All right, throwaway pot. So yeah, I mean the way you play these is you want to be
check pretty often, right?
Yeah, I mean there's no. I mean, yeah, this is a really weird spot. This is a fairly weird spot. I mean, obviously, I think we have to call an ace, but we're not actually loving it because
chopping too often.
We're chopping a lot. Yeah, I mean, like, what can we even get value from? Kind of deal here. Like once they check through, we're like, it's very difficult for us to get any value at all. And then like, what are we bluffing? Like, it doesn't make. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, he's got quads. So yeah, I mean, it's just it doesn't make.
Ooh, why doesn't he stab this at high frequency?
Yeah, Snowy plays a bit odd. Same kind of deal. His range very, very strong. So
can we just fold this ace high with nothing going on for it besides the pair outs?
Yeah, probably. Now that we have the fours to call with, we can fold some more of ace high. So if we bet the flop, then we probably wouldn't be able to fold the ace high. Just because the four brings a bunch of pairs for us. Obviously, any ace high with the straight draw, we continue and ace high of diamonds, a bunch of diamonds and stuff like that. And it's a half pot bet instead of quarter pot bet, so fold a fair bit more. Yeah, so who bets half the pot? We have backdoors on both sides, both with the king and as well as with the 7, but strong enough is the question. I think Jack 10 also has that, but the 9 also has like backdoors with the 5. So I think we can float some of the time, but most of the time we're going to be folding. Obviously, if we had any backdoor flush draw, we would call. There's a fair chunk of gut shots we can float as well. This is a half pot bet. We probably also call most of our ace highs.
Okay.
So I think this is going to be either way. All right, so small raise with the yeah, okay, and so he's checked to us. We've got the open ender, but a 10 isn't amazing.
Yeah, King Jack is that.
So the question is whether our pair outs are going to be good enough at the time. Because if they are, then we actually can try and check back and get showdown against ace high. And if they aren't, then we should almost always bet. Of course, there is something to be said about checking back, and then when a 5 comes, we have the nuts as well.
Okay, so he does have like a lot of ace highs.
Yeah, I think because we get dominated by King Jack when the 10 comes, and we don't have any backdoor flush draws, we can check this one back. But with a backdoor flush draw, I'm leaning much more towards betting. Right, this one might bet a low frequency as well, but I think checking this one is okay. All right, so it's checked to us a second time. A little bit less worried about King Jack now because I think he would have bet some of them. So I think it would be fair enough to go for a bet. Remember the 50% rule still applies. So when we should be checking back more than half the time. And so when we're betting, we're going to be betting like relatively polar, I think.
Wow, get it through.
What was our bet size on the turn there? I missed it.
I potted it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we do have a gut shot. But
I think this is the worst queen we can have here.
We have a lot of queens. There's not really much of a decision here. We can continue with almost all of our kings. Continue with literally all of our flush draws. A good chunk of our jacks and some of our nines as well. Obviously, any pair plus straight draw will continue. I think all of our jack X with the backdoor with clubs, jack X or clubs will all call. And obviously any of our nines with the flush draw will call as well. But queen 2, nothing going on.
Yep.
It's a pretty easy fold. Maybe if we had 2 clubs, but even then it's probably not great either. All right, so 3-bet and he calls. We have a couple of back doors. The queen high isn't an amazing spot for us. So we also have to remember the 50% rule.
Could you say that again? The queen high isn't too good for us?
Yeah, it's not amazing because they have a bunch of queen highs. They've got ace queen kind of thing.
If it was like king 7-5 instead.
Yeah, then it's a bit better for us because then we've got all the ace king and they don't. But here they've got all the ace queen. I mean, obviously we've got all the ace queen as well, but they didn't full bet any ace queen or not too much of it. So they got all the top pair, top kicker. But if it was king 7-5, then we've got all the top pair, top kicker, and our opponent actually doesn't. So it's quite a big difference between king 7-5 and queen 7-5 because we've got ace king and they don't. So knowing that, we're going to be checking some of the time. We're going to have a checking range, and we want to construct a checking range so that they can't bet into us more than half the time.
Okay. So we can add this to the checking range then?
Yeah, we can put this in checking range. We can also bet it. If we decide to bet it, we'll bet it pretty large. Probably half pot a pot. I mean, I could be wrong with that. Maybe there's something in George's Sims which might give us a clue. Kind of what is it, 4-span? No, 5-span. I mean, this is close. This is the small blind versus cutoff sims that George ran, with half pot and pot sizes, so both of them being used, and there's a fair checking range.
Can we see a 6 of diamonds? It bets it very frequently at pot or half pot.
Yeah, pot and half pot. So I think the same kind of deal will be going here, right? So we're betting half pot and half pot. So pot or half pot and checking. There's quite a big difference between Queen 7-5 and like King 6-4. No, it's King 6-4 rainbow. Where is the king highs? Queen 4-3, King 4-3. Yeah, it's up King 4-3. Yeah, there's quite a big difference here, right? So we're betting almost like 80% of the time, more than 80% of the time on the king high versus the queen high, when we're betting 55% of the time. So you can see there's a big difference in the betting frequency. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So we can, so yeah.
So on board, it's bad for us. Bet bigger and less frequently.
Yep. It's not that it's bad for you. It's that we've got so we still have the nut advantage. It's just that they have a lot of good middling hands to defend with.
Mm.
So on three-way pots, we're going to be checking a lot.
Yep.
The whole 50% rule sort of still does apply. I mean, the out-of-position player wants to try and construct their range such that the total of the in-position betting range will be half the pot, but they can't really impact do quite as much with their checking range.
Yep, I think just fold. Pretty straightforward.
So this one we can call, we can squeeze. Obviously, it was suited, pretty easy squeeze. And in terms of constructing ranges with offset inserted hands and stacked pot ratios and stuff like that, and using multiple preflop sizes, if we're using multiple preflop sizes, this one could be chucked into a slightly bigger size because of its blockers. So yeah, this hand could probably go either way. So just call for now. Play a multi-way pot.
Okay.
Yeah, so we check. That's pretty good. So we can check because we actually have the widest range out of all the players. It's been facing a bet quite often, and here we should be folding a lot. All right, should be folding a fair chunk of our range. I think we can fold all of our fives, almost all of our nines. We can fold queens. Maybe we'd probably call some of them. But yeah, when this happens, we can fold a lot. So don't hesitate folding a 5. I wouldn't hesitate folding like a lot of the nines and even the queens. It becomes much easier to justify a fold with a very weak queen.
So this is because there's a caller in a multi-way bet? Okay.
Yep. Obviously, it was heads up. I'm not folding any pair, but because this guy's called, right, we don't have to bluff catch anymore because he's done it for us. And so we actually have to beat the bottom of this guy's range in order to justify a call. So if he's calling a 5, then we can't actually call any 5 because we'd chop or lose to some of his hands. Same sort of thing, right? If he's got a 9, it's difficult for us to justify calling 9s if he's got 9s in his range. In terms of this hand, I mean, it does draw to the nuts with a gut shot 10, which is nice, and it's the nuts over the 10-8. I'm sorry, Jack 8. So we can probably justify calling because we get the additional pot odds. We only have to be. We have 20% pot odds to call here, 300 until 1500. Which is roughly our equity, but we only get to see one card if we make that call, so it's really only 10% chance of hitting the 10. and then with 2 players in the pot, we have to think about what our equity is. Sorry, our expectation is after we've made the nuts, and it's actually probably very high. It's going to be quite a bit higher than twice the pot on the turn. So does that make any sense to you guys doing that?
Yep.
The math?
So you're saying you're calling because it's a lot of implied odds, and it's the absolute nuts if a 10 comes. We cooler a lot of hands.
Yeah, so we've only got 20% to call, and there's a 10% chance of
Hitting
the
the
10
10.
coming. But the 10%, but when that 10 does come, we have to think about what our expectation is when the 10 comes, right? And it's probably going to be more than twice the pot.
Yep.
So it's a 10% chance that it comes. We're calling 20%. Right, so we've got 20% direct odds, but our expectation is going to be twice the pot when we hit, right? So we've got a 10% chance of having an expectation of twice the pot. Yeah, so that means that we can call. There is also it might not be exactly twice the pot, might be a little bit less than twice the pot, but we can say something in terms of having a check through on the turn and then hitting a 10 on the river, as well as hitting a king or a jack. So it's probably okay to be calling here. Yeah, and there you just let it go. On the flop, if we had a backdoor flush draw, then we might decide to squeeze. Obviously, this hand could have squeezed as well. But I just wanted to show you what the logic was of drawing to the nuts in a multi-way pot. 6-7. I think this is
Yep, it's
go either way.
I think. Yep, either way, pink.
Go either way, yeah. Yeah, and when you're drawing in a multi-way pot, you really want to be drawing to the nuts. Like 10-8 there, sorry, 10-8, Jack-8 type hands, they're not very happy at all because they're drawing to the second nuts where they got shot. So you can much more easily justify folding. Because when you do hit, sometimes you're going to get stacked, and so your expectations aren't going to be anywhere near as high. Yep, so he's called. I mean, this isn't an amazing flop for us against the small blind. The small blind's going to have plenty of queens and kings and stuff in their calling range, as well as the set of fives. So we can be folding quite a bit against this donk, probably even more than alpha, which is 20%, roughly. But I think the bet is small enough that with a backdoor flush draw, as well as with a backdoor flush draw, we can call, and then the ace high, obviously. All of the A6 of diamonds can probably fold if they're having backdoors. So yeah, pretty nice turn for us. It's poured into us. So like you think about in terms of expectation, or in terms of like equity and pot odds and stuff like that. In terms of pot odds, we're getting 33% to call, and then we only have
4-1 on hitting.
Yeah, 4-1 or whatever I'm hitting, right? But you have to think about how much the expectation is when we do hit. Like when we hit, we're going to stack a few of his flush draws and stronger hands. So if he's got a flush draw here, or we're going to stack him flush over flush. When the flush comes in and it's only seven spades when that happens. So it's going to happen like 16-18% of the time. Or 16% of the time. We can win his stack, essentially. But when the flush draw hits and he doesn't have 2 spades, and he's bluffing. Actually, when he's bluffing, I think we can win with ace high in terms of our showdown value some of the time. As well. So we might have a small amount of EV by just having ace high and then having him check the river to us, and then we can check back and win. So that's a small amount of EV doing that. But the main bulk of our EV is when we hit. So we hit 25% of the time, and then the question is, when we hit, what is our expectation, right? Do we expect to win the extra essentially 760 here, right? So say we've got 25% chance of hitting. Do we expect to win the extra 760, which is what we need? And the answer is a resounding yes. So in that sort of sense, it's a implied odds type deal, right? We have some other draws that we can call with that can bluff the river for us when the spade comes in, right? If we have maybe even a king X with a single spade or queen X with a single spade that might want to call and then bluff the river if the spade comes in and he checks to us. Or maybe like an ace jack or ace 10, which also wants to call sometimes for their gut shot, and they might have ace of spades or the 10 of spades, which can bluff for us when the spade comes in. There's also something to do with the ace. When the ace comes, it might even be able to beat a king. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty polar now. Now we have to remember the 50% rule. So he's giving up a lot of the time, right? And it makes it very difficult for you to decide what to do if you don't know the 50% rule here, right? If he's giving up 100% of his range, then like what do you do here? Do you bet value, or are you betting as a bluff, or what's going on? But once you know the 50% rule, even in these give up spots, say he's got 90% air here, you're not value betting against the 90% air, right? You're value betting against the 10% that he doesn't give up. And in order to figure that out, you want to use the 50% rule. So if we're doing the 50% rule and we decide to just pot it with 50% of our hands, we're looking at the top 1/3 and the bottom 1/6, essentially. So the top 1/3 for value and the bottom 1/6, and that way we get 2-to-1 value to bluff ratio for our pot sized bet, and that gives us 50% of our range betting. Does that math work out? Does that math make sense for everyone, or should I use paint to show a bit more?
Yeah, could you do that? I didn't follow.
Yeah, so say this is our entire range. Oops, no, this one. So this is our entire range, and we want to be betting it 50% of the time. All right, and so we want to use a pot-sized bet. So that means we have a 2-to-1 value to bluff ratio.
Yep.
Okay, and in order to get 50% with a 2-to-1 value to bluff ratio, we want to bet the top 1/3, right, and the bottom 1/6, because 1/3 plus 1/6 is 50%.
Yeah.
Okay, so our value might be here roughly, right, and then our bluffs might be this is green, and then the bluffs might be here, right, and that gives us a bluff to value ratio of 2-to-1 with the 50% betting frequency using the 50% rule. So then it becomes very easy to figure out what we're doing with a7. Is a7 within the top 1/3 or bottom 1/6 that we want to be betting for a pot size bet?
It's in neither.
Yeah, it seems like
probably in here. So we can just check it, right? We have 2 pairs and stuff like that. So even if our opponent's range is 90% air and only 10% hands which he wants to defend with, right, we can still use the 50% rule to figure out what we're doing with our range. We don't have to think as hard about our opponent's range and how we're going to construct our range to do whatever. We just use the 50% rule, right? So it makes thinking oh shit, what happened? It makes the our thought process a lot more streamlined to use the 50% rule in spots like this. It just makes it very easy for us to know what to do against a strong opponent, so we can just check it back. Yeah, there we go.
Damn. He was running a pure bluff with a gutter on the turn.
Yeah, one of those. Same kind of deal.
Yep.
Bottom of our king X, so we fold. Yeah, we don't have anything going on.
Yep.
So I think that might have been different in my ranges.
Let me see. No, it's not. It's gray.
It's always it's fold, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was leaning towards the fold. Yeah, I mean, maybe if we had a diamond, we could float, but just the naked gut shot is not strong
Yeah.
enough. Like if we had diamond or overcard,
Wrong end as well.
Get cooler.
Queen 10 offsuit against this small one. Can't remember. I think it's a fold.
Let me see. Yep. Queen Jack off and King 10 off are the pinks.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, top two. Obviously, want to keep betting. This is one of the boards we want to be betting for a small size.
What board? What did you say?
So it's one of the boards we want to be betting for a small
Oh, okay.
size. So a bet quarter pot there, and you call. I mean, the 5 comes, it completes a few draws, but both ranges are wide enough that we're not super scared of the 6-3 suited and ace 3. Not super scared of them, even though those will be in both players' ranges.
All right. Can we just pot it?
Yep, so 50% we're all going to be checking quite a bit. And then we decide to bet. We're going to be betting relatively polar, so I think we're betting spotting here. That's fine. I mean, it also completes.
We have a lot of stabs that just check on the turn.
Yeah, all the stabs check and then give up. In the sense that if our opponent bets, we're going to just fold, and then if we'll have some hands which will check raise as well. Maybe that hand could have gone into a check raise range.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think this is one of the closer floats. Probably yes.
So on boards like this, see if I can bring it up. I've got paired boards here somewhere. You want to be actually pretty selective. Like just because you're betting small doesn't mean that. Do you even have ace 5? No, I don't. Gotta add that. Gotta add this.
I know we fold pretty often on this kind of board.
Yeah, so let's say, for example, King 7, that's King 7 round, but I have to add more of these to the paired flops thing. I'm going to add some more. But like 10 high, 10-6 with a backdoor, maybe that's being raised and folded. And similarly here with Queen 10 with the flush draw, like it's 9-7. With the diamond is folding, Jack 6, Jack 7 with the diamonds are folding, and you got King 7. So it's pretty okay to say we can fold here. So I don't think I actually need to float. And if we wanted to continue with this hand, we would continue with as a raise instead.
Okay, I see. So we're calling all the 5s.
Maybe triples around the 5. Yeah, we're calling and raising some of our 5s.
and then a lot of flush draws.
Yeah, flush draws can both call and raise depending on how strong they are.
What happens with like a king queen, king jack, no backdoors?
Yeah, I mean king high is king high here, so it's the strongest unpaired hand, so you can float them.
Okay.
You can call, you can raise. So on these paired boards, when they bet small, there's a lot of raising and a lot of overfolding.
I feel like the small blind isn't 3-betting us too much.
Yeah, I mean he's got to call.
He's a calling range. Is that only because we mid raised?
Yeah. And Snowy has a calling range against min raises. Also, I think because of the level that we set it at, there's less rake, and so Snowy likes to call more when there's less rake. Yeah. So here the king isn't great for us. 7 open ender. Fair chunk of we're going to have hands like king queen, pocket fives, pocket eights. They will all want to bet and bet for a very large size, or if they can check raise. I think this hand, maybe not so much. Maybe with obviously with 2 clubs, it's going to be slam dunk over bet 3 times a pot, 4 times a pot, something like that. Maybe with a single club as well. Without any clubs, you may want to check some more and try and draw to a pair.
Okay.
Because you still got pair draws with the king and the jack. Sorry, with the jack and the 10 to beat some stuff like a 5x or an 8x. If we check and they bet, then we can decide to raise or call. Yeah, so it's small enough that we can profitably call.
Direct odds.
Yeah, we have
even better.
We have direct odds to call as well as pair outs and stuff like that. And then if we miss, we can dump, kind of thing. Right, so I missed the 8. Going to be a fair few 8s. Going to be a fair few flush draws. So here we can just donk and hopefully we can get some ace-high type hands to fold. Just make it 150 because whatever. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, there's a chance that we fold out of West hand, as well. Or there's also a chance that we fold out of the chop. All right, so the 3-bet pot called, but the weakest under pair. We do have sets to check raise, bunch of queen X. It's questionable whether we should continue with this hand. Have a look at what our calling range against the 3-bet is. And that will help us decide. So this is what the small one versus 3-bet calling range looks like. So we got some 7s and some 6s with these hands, as well as some of these hands up here. Got these hands here to float, right, or raise, right?
Yep.
Obviously, got a lot of pairs. Other folds might include Jack 10, which doesn't have too much going on. Maybe with Jack 10 with a backdoor flush draw might decide to raise, or float. Bunch of Queen X that can call.
How would you play hands like the King 10, King 9, King 8? Yeah. The suited kings.
Maybe like King 8, King 9 have better chance of check raising.
Right, because you have backdoors, and let's say you do have a backdoor flush as well.
Yeah, so King 9 is good because it's got backdoors both ways.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I think we're going to continue with most ace highs.
I think deuces is just a fold here. Not much going on with it.
Yeah.
And we also have like a lot of the suited connectors that hit this board.
Fairly sure we'd be overfolding if that happened by a fair bit. Obviously, we can overfold a bit because we're out of position. And we wouldn't have any donks in this range. Sorry, donks on this board. But like, if you want to do it the old pen and paper way, can chuck our range in,
Okay.
and then see what it looks like. So like this. Say that for argument's sake, we continue with all the optional ones at, just to say, sorry, with checks at 50% for the options, just to make it the math easier for us. Okay, there's that. We put the board in. What was it again? Don't remember the board.
Queen 7-6 rainbow.
Okay, so Queen 7-6 rainbow, and we're facing a half pot bet. So yeah, we go in and rank our hands. So all the Queen X comes in first.
Yep, and 7s, 6s, those pairs like A6, A7.
Yeah, and then these ones. And that's only 30% of hands. And then like this stuff can gut shots there and gut shots here. Right, and we discussed King 8 maybe. And Jack 8 maybe.
You said we had some ace highs that do call, like maybe ace jack, ace 10 suited with the backdoors.
Yeah, let's have these ones. Yeah, I mean it's getting there. It's getting there. Maybe this one. Yeah, it's getting close enough. I think we can choose if we want to continue with these hands instead.
And I think like 5s and 4s would be better than deuces. Can also have running straights.
Yeah, don't the King 10, King 9s also have opens on both sides?
Backdoors. King 8 does. King 9 does as well. Actually, no, King 8 doesn't. King 9, King 9 does. King 10. Yeah, I mean, yeah, no.
King 10 does too.
With the ace highs and stuff, I think, yeah, then we can get around 60% continuing range, which is probably okay to fold to twos. So alpha against a half pot bet is going to be 30%, so 33%, so we continue with 67%. But since we're out of position and our opponent has some showdown value with their checks, we can overfold. So we might only be continuing with like 60% or 55% of hands.
Okay.
So that's pretty nice.
Beautiful. Oh, and he has a lot of stabs are just giving up.
Yeah, so we got to think about whether or not our pair draws are worth the stab. So whether we can sacrifice our pair draws, or if our pair draws will count towards our equity of betting. Obviously, if we if we bet, our opponent calls, and a queen or a jack comes, we actually might win a showdown. But obviously, if we check as well, and a queen or a jack comes, we can win a showdown.
Yep, I think a bet is good though. Like our draw is really strong, and he still might call with like a 10 with one spade or 4 with one spade that we beat if a jack and queen comes.
Yep, I agree. And then when we want to bet, what size we want to bet? What size makes sense for our value?
Flushes want to go big. But
Yeah,
it's not
okay,
four to a flush.
you've got to
Right?
think
Yeah.
50% rule type stuff. So, what percentage of our ranges are flush? Like, not a lot.
Okay.
It's probably only around 10%, 8-10%. And so we've got to think of the remainder of our value is going to be some King X, obviously. It's probably going to start to be the bottom of that. And those want to be getting around half pot. So, we're about half pot as well.
Okay.
We can get a little bit bigger if you want.
All right.
Yeah, so it was a bit more obvious because we have all the
Can we like show the Equilab chart again? Like
yeah, so
just really quickly.
it's just a bit more obvious on the Queen 10-8 because we've got all the pairs and straights and stuff that we can fold fours against the half pot bet. Versus on the Queen 7-6, it was a bit less obvious because we didn't have those extra pairs for the sevens and the sixes.
Okay. So like all our suited Broadways hit. And
Yeah,
continue.
in some sort of sense, and then those would continue instead. Both all suited and offsuit Broadways. Yeah, so one pair, check. Pretty good if we want to have a better five, then like obviously with a diamond would be better. I mean, it's not amazing.
All right.
But I think we got a call and then yeah, it's not great.
Yep. Oh.
Yeah, leaning much towards even if it's a quarter pot bet. Blockers. What blockers do we have? We have blockers to the low
We
end.
block 8-9, the missed straight, but we blocked Jack-9.
Yeah, it's one of those. So we block Jack 9, but also block 8-9, and other 9x hands that our opponent wants to be bluffing. So, yeah, not so great. Maybe with Ace 5, another 5x. A lot of our 5x actually probably two pair there. So,
Yep. Very good.
yeah, so backdoor with the 6. It's not amazing for us.
Yeah.
I think we can just fold it. If we had a stronger backdoor, there's a bunch of gut shots that we have actually, offset gut shots at the bottom, and some other backdoor hands with backdoor flush draws, all the offset aces. Let me show you the versus limp. What it looks like. So the big one, small, the one like so. On the ace 7-3, obviously all the ace, all the sevens, all the threes, and then a bunch of gut shots around here. Flush draws, using these hands up here, back to flush draws. Better. I mean, all the King X can call instead, and so that Queen 6, even though we have a single backdoor, I mean, it's worse than the Queen Jack, Queen 8, Queen 6 suited type stuff, which we would otherwise float. All right, so what do you guys? This is the last hand of the 100 hand set. Do you guys want to continue another 100 hands?
It's getting a little late for me. I'm gonna go to bed soon. So.
All right. Well, in that case, I think this will be last hand.
All right.
Hand number 100.
Sure.
So aces. So hopefully we get some action. No, we can't. All right. Do you guys have any questions about any of the hands that we played? Hopefully, you guys were taking down some notes or something. Any questions about some of the hands that we played, or Snowy, or other Plan Explain type stuff?
Just reiterating some of the stuff you went over. Just because the turn improved doesn't mean you have to bet. Like in the Queen 7 diamond hand.
Yeah.
We picked up the backdoor draw. that was pretty important takeaway. And then when the river flush completed, the bet sizing thing you talked about.
Yeah.
Bet what you would bet certain value. Like if you have a 10 in the Jack 10 board, maybe bet like quarter or half pot, and then with a Jack you bet like pot, and then strong hands need to be allocated to different sizes.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, in that one when we had a flush, because we have a lot more hands in the half pot, quarter pot bet size, we can use that more often in the half pot, quarter pot bet size. Yeah, so yeah, a few good takeaways there. Also, another one, using the 50% rule to figure out betting ranges, even if our opponent is taking give up line. So often you can get pretty confused with that. When your opponent is taking an obvious line where they're just giving up, you still use a 50% rule to figure out what your betting range will look like there. And that helps you decide what to do, even if their opponent's range is like mostly just give ups.
Yeah. I also like the thing where you talk about if the card is very good for the opponent, be very polar. Like when the Queen XX King board, the King came.
So in that spots, they've got, we have the nut advantage, but they have a range advantage on those turns. So they don't have any sets, but we do, because they would have bet all their sets instead of checking back any. And so when we have a set, we want to pile the money in against a king. And the way that we do that is we bet pretty enormous on the turn because we've only got 2 streets left to do it.
And you threaten him with a river shove.
Yeah, so overbet turn and then shove river is one of the lines that we could take when we have a set there. Of course, there is the option to check raise, but that is a line that I would prefer with if we have a set. Do them more than half the time, I think.
Oh yeah, another interesting thing that I thought got out of this lesson is the multi-way thing. Previously we played like hibiscus, just heads up, so none of this like dynamic. Calling multi-way, you don't have to defend as frequently when someone else calls, and only call when you're drawing to the nuts and you have good implied odds.
Yeah. So if you got a nut draw and you have good odds, and you think that you have good implied odds by you can calculate what your direct odds are on the call to one card, right? I mean, your equity is one thing. Your equity assumes that you see both cards, but in game you're only seeing one card at a time. So you want to calculate your direct odds to see the next card, and then what you think your expectation is when you hit that card. You also want to add your expectation for hitting some other cards in the deck as well. So in that example, when we had the Queen 9-5 flop and we had the King Jack, we were getting 20% odds to call, 20% pot odds, but our equity to hit the nuts on the next street was only around 10%. What that means is that we need to make up for that either when we hit the nut, when we hit our nut hand, we win twice the pot, right? We win twice as much as we would have liked, or which is a reasonable thing that we can do with the 2 streets left to go, or we have some other draw equity. When we hit a king, maybe that's good. When we hit a jack, maybe that's good. Or if it checks through, then we can hit the 10 on the river, which would happen some of the time as well. So those all add up. So in that way we can have nut draws in our range, calling on the flop when someone has called before us, and not have to worry about we're not really bluff catching. We're literally just calling as a draw. So most of our calling range could be draws there. Obviously, we could have some traps and stuff as well, but we're not so worried about constructing appropriate calling ranges to worry about the next street, because the next street will bring some strong hands for our range. Sorry. Yeah. Any other questions?
Oh, I also wrote down for 3 betting pots, the 5-7 queens are better for the caller because we can both have ace queen, but on the king high flops, we're better because we have the ace king, and they don't.
Yeah, exactly right. Great. So yeah, you guys learned some stuff, which is good.
Yep.
And those at home, if you were following along, hopefully you guys learned some stuff as well. So I'm going to start recording now.